How did the Bible come to be? And what does that process tell us about God himself? As a church family, we've been reading through the entire Bible over the course of the past 3 years. We call that project Immerse, and we're only 4 weeks away from having completed that project. Right now, we're reading 1st and 2nd Chronicles. And as we read 1st and 2nd Chronicles, we can't help but notice that again and again and again, the author or the authors make reference to other sources for their material. They'll say that this came from that place, this came from another place, or it can be verified. You can double check and confirm this information by looking in this source. A good example of that is here in 1 Chronicles chapter 9, the very first verse. So all Israel was enrolled by genealogies, and these are written in the book of the kings of Israel. This particular source is mentioned more than one time in the course of 1st and 2nd Chronicles, but it's a good example of how that the Chronicles make use of court records, things that were said by the kings or done by the kings, or those that were in the court making note of this, citation of these things. It's for official court record. And here, 1st Chronicles makes use of such records. Sometimes, though, Chronicles says that the source is not so much court records, but prophetic records. There are prophets who spoke or wrote, and their words and actions were recorded. A good example of that is here in 2 Chronicles chapter 20 and verse 34. Now the rest of the acts of Jehoshaphat, from first to last, are written in the annals of Jehu. And incidentally, reference again is made here as to the book of the kings of Israel, which apparently included this portion known as the annals of Jehu. And so there are court records that are mentioned. There are prophetic records that are mentioned. Other examples could be given. One particular example here in chapter 33, there is a group of people known as seers. Think form of a prophet, maybe something halfway between a prophet and one of the court officials in the palace for the king, an advisor to the king, a seer. 2 Chronicles 33 and verse 19, talking about Manasseh, the king, his prayer and how God received his entreaty, all his sin and his faithlessness, the sites on which he built high places and set up the sacred poles and the images before he humbled himself. These are written where? In the records of the seers. Well, there's a great many different sources that are recorded in 1st and 2nd Chronicles, but when you think about this, it tells us at least two things, besides the thought of being able to verify or confirm these records in earlier source material. First of all, it clarifies and corrects a common misunderstanding of Scripture. Many people act as if the Bible just simply dropped down to us from heaven, as if people were writing by dictation, merely just one taking dictation from God as to what was said word for word. But that's not the way Scripture describes its own creation by any stretch of the imagination. Quite the opposite. Here, research and checking sources is involved. You see, when we're reading the Bible, we're not reading material today that was written to us. We're reading somebody else's mail very long ago on the other side of the planet. These records were not written to us, but they are for us. That's an important distinction, and it will help you as you seek to understand any and all of Scripture. But thinking about how the Bible came to be in this regard also tells us something about the character of God. Here, humans are doing the research and the work of compiling records. Human work was involved. And that tells us something about this God who reveals himself to us through this word, who speaks to us. God works with us, not just for us. It's not like he's above us and dropped it down on us, or that he's underneath us and trying to push us up and elevate us. Rather, he's one who has come alongside of us and co-partners with us. He takes us in with his work. He works with us and not just for us. Think on these things. Grace and peace be with us all.